Welcome to the video presentation of my instructional design project. The flow of this presentation mirrors that of my instructional design project document. First, I'll run through the introduction where I explain the workshop and its purpose. Next, I'll go over what the students will be able to do by the end of the workshop. Then I'll explain the assessments I've chosen to gauge student understanding. Next, I'll share my choice of learning materials. Then I'll explain the learning strategies I'm using for instruction. And to wrap everything up, I'll explain the rationale behind choosing to design the project in the way that I did and reflect on the design process. This project is based on a professional development workshop that is designed to teach managers how to navigate an onboarding meeting. What is onboarding? Onboarding is the process of bringing a new employee into the company and making sure they are set up for success. One of our biggest stumbling blocks as a company is employee turnover. Training new employees takes a lot of time and money. As a nonprofit, those two things are in short supply. We have created an onboarding program that helps foster a positive relationship between new employees and their managers during the new employee's first year of employment. The onboarding program uses a series of meetings and surveys in order to encourage communication between the new employee and the manager. Making sure the managers have a positive working relationship with their employees leads to long-term employment and company loyalty. The onboarding workshop is a 2-day workshop that is intended to train managers on how to navigate the onboarding process, specifically the onboarding meeting. The onboarding meeting is the cornerstone of the onboarding process because it ensures the manager and employee have dedicated time to speak face to face. This workshop focuses on training the managers to execute an onboarding meeting. It includes a self-study portion where the managers complete an e-learning presentation independently prior to the workshop, an in-person training session, and a trainer-observed assessment session. Let's take a look at the learning objectives for the onboarding workshop. There are 3 goals the managers need to achieve by the end of the workshop in order to ensure the success of every onboarding meeting they will have in the future. The first objective is the manager will be able to explain the 3 components of an onboarding meeting, discussing the status of a new employee's training, discussing the new employee's acclimation to the company culture, and developing and explaining a plan of action. The onboarding meeting has 3 main elements that are critical to its success and the success of the program. The manager needs to have a strong understanding of what those elements are and what they entail. Knowing the elements of an onboarding meeting is the first step in successfully completing an onboarding meeting. Objective 2 is the manager will be able to execute an onboarding meeting with a new employee. Meeting this objective shows that the manager knows how to conduct an onboarding meeting and combine all necessary elements. The onboarding meeting is the cornerstone of the entire onboarding program, so the manager needs to be able to conduct it with confidence. Lastly, the manager will be able to develop a plan of action that includes 2 measurable goals to meet before the next onboarding meeting and the steps necessary to meet those goals. Developing a plan of action is a crucial part of the onboarding meeting because it is used as a starting point for the next meeting, and it serves as the official documentation for the meeting. The manager has to be able to meet this objective in order for the onboarding meeting to be effective. Now let's move on to the assessments. There are 3 assessments for this workshop, 1 formative and 2 summative. The sticky note activity that is being used to assess Objective 1 is a form of formative assessment that is used to see what prior knowledge the managers are bringing to the workshop after having completed the Managing the Onboarding e-learning course on their own. The managers will be given a pack of sticky notes and asked to write down one thing they learned about the 3 components of the onboarding meeting from the e-learning course. The trainer will separate the whiteboard into 3 sections, one section for each element of the meeting. The managers will put their answers in the corresponding column, and the trainer will read them aloud. As a group, they will discuss the answers. The sticky note activity will be assessed using a holistic rubric. Objective 2 will be assessed by pairing the managers together and having them demonstrate an onboarding meeting. One person plays the role of the manager while the other plays the role of the employee, and then they switch. For this assessment, there are 2 pre-written scenarios that are given to each group. This is one of 2 summative assessments that will be given to the managers during the workshop. Using a holistic rubric, the trainer will determine if each manager successfully executes the onboarding meeting. A written plan of action will be used to assess Objective 3. During the mock meeting, this manager will develop a plan of action in order to solve the problems presented to them in each scenario by writing measurable goals and the steps necessary to achieve those goals. The trainer will use an analytic rubric to grade whether or not the manager created an action plan that addresses the problems presented to them during the mock meeting. The plan of action is the second of the summative assessments that will be given to the managers. I have chosen 4 different learning materials to assist in this workshop: an interactive e-learning lesson, the official standard operating procedure or SOP, the onboarding meeting checklist, and an example of a plan of action. The e-learning course titled Managing the Onboarding Process covers the basic knowledge needed to meet all 3 objectives. It is a condensed overview designed to give the managers an introduction into the foundational knowledge they need in order to meet the overall goal of this workshop. Since this is a short workshop, it's beneficial to have the managers complete the course on their own before the workshop begins. In doing so, they come into the workshop having a small understanding of what will be covered by the trainer, and the trainer has more time for one-on-one activities. This course will explain all 3 components of the onboarding meeting, describe how to develop the plan of action, and ultimately prepare the manager to execute an onboarding meeting. The e-learning course aligns with all 3 objectives because it is an overview course that breaks down all 3 parts of the onboarding meeting. Conduct the Employee Onboarding Process SOP is the official document that explains the entire onboarding process. It goes into great detail about what the manager is expected to do during the onboarding meeting. It outlines the company policies regarding onboarding meetings and lists all the materials needed to conduct the meeting. I chose the SOP as the learning material for objective number 1 because it is the official document produced by our tech writing team that details the company policies regarding onboarding employees that align with FDA regulations. Not only is it detailed, the SOP is easily accessible to anyone at any time, so it makes for a good resource. The SOP aligns with the learning objective number 1. For this objective, the managers need to be able to explain all 3 components of the onboarding meeting. Reading over this SOP will give the managers a tight grasp on all 3 parts of the onboarding meeting and what they entail. The onboarding meeting checklist is a list of what the manager needs to cover during the onboarding meeting. It ensures that the meeting stays on track and helps make sure the manager hits all the key points. The onboarding meeting checklist is a good choice for assisting the managers in meeting objective number 2 because it is the actual checklist they will use when conducting the onboarding meeting. This gives them the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the checklist beforehand so they can ensure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible. The onboarding meeting checklist aligns with the learning objective number 2 because it gives the manager the bread and butter, so to speak, of the onboarding meeting. The post meeting action plan document is an example of a completed plan of action form. It shows the manager what the finished product of the onboarding meeting, the plan of action, should look like. It gives the manager some examples of measurable goals and how the employee will meet those goals. The learning material chosen aligns with Objective 3 because it shows the manager what a plan of action should look like. Reading through this example will help the manager better understand what is expected of them when creating the plan of action. There are 2 types of learning strategies being implemented in this workshop: behaviorist learning theory and experiential learning. Behaviorist learning theory proposes that learning leads to a change in an individual's behavior. An example of this is seen in the learning activity used to meet objective number 1. Even though behaviorist learning theory is used during the workshop, the bulk of the instruction comes from experiential learning. Experiential learning is an engaged learning process whereby students learn by doing and by reflecting on the experience. Behaviorist learning theory is used to meet Objective 1. The trainer leads the manager in a question and answer session by playing a game of crumble and shoot. This is an example of behaviorist learning theory because 1. The trainer is the primary delivery method for the information, and 2. Asking the managers questions and giving feedback to their answers gives the managers knowledge that they didn't have before, and that knowledge can lead to a change in behavior. The experiential learning begins with the fishbowl activity, where each group is assigned an open-ended question that they must form an answer to by discussing it together. The group that is discussing the question is in the fishbowl, while the others circle around them and watch and listen. Once the group has decided on an answer, they get feedback from all the other groups outside the fishbowl. This activity is a great example of how experiential learning works. The managers practice solving problems, they take in their colleagues' feedback, and they adjust their actions accordingly. The last example of experiential learning is a timed writing assignment where the managers have to write measurable goals to be included in a plan of action based on prompts given to them by the trainer. They read their goals aloud and get feedback from their colleagues. This is another example of experiential learning because the managers are learning by doing. They are actively writing goals to be included in the plan of action, and they are also getting feedback from their colleagues and their trainer in order to reflect and improve their goals. This is the final design plan for my onboarding workshop. I've explained the rationale behind the individual elements of the project, but I want to explain why I formatted the course the way that I did. One of the biggest obstacles instructional designers have to work around in our company is scheduling. Most of our employees do not keep regular hours, and they are in and out of the office all day. It is nearly impossible to gather people together at the same time to do in person training, so in person training is very rare. While our training is a high priority in order to keep us aligned with FDA regulations, the employee's time is also valuable. We are the sole provider of blood for our local hospitals, so keeping everything running as smoothly and efficiently as possible could be the difference between life and death for a patient. That's why the instructional design team has to find the balance between training demands and workflow obligations. That's why I designed the e learning course or presentation for them to complete on their own prior to the workshop. That way, the trainer can use the in person time to do more hands on activities. And the reason I want the in person training to be as active as possible is simple, really. No one likes to be bored. Even as adults, when we're engaged, we learn better. That being said, while planning this workshop did have its challenges, I feel like I've learned a great deal about how to approach the training needs of our organization in the future. While we tend to favor very basic means of training and assessments, I've learned that there are ways to enhance the learning experience for my colleagues and coworkers to ensure they get the most effective and efficient training possible. I am definitely going to take what I've learned throughout this project and this course and apply it to my role as an instructional designer. This concludes the presentation of my instructional design project.